Destoroyah vs. Space Godzilla is a debate that's been around ever since the end of the Heisei era. I'm going to explain who would actually win a matchup between these two legendary enemies of Godzilla. For starters, Space Godzilla is definitely a versatile kaiju to say the least. Being made from Godzilla's DNA and born within a black hole, he's been confirmed to have absorbed over several million supernovas, so multi-star level easily. He's been comparable to Godzilla in power at that point, who would have been definitely large starbuster, but due to the millions of supernova absorptions, it's likely they were both way ahead of that. He did get defeated pretty easily by a couple of red spiral rays, but then again, what kaiju doesn't within the Heisei era? He's definitely fast. The Godzilla universe is sometimes considered infinite, and is considered infinite in the comics, like a lot, so we can scale him to infinite speed through him traveling across space at absurd speeds. And his crystals are even faster than that. On top of that, Godzilla, who we know for a fact has around infinite speed due to dodging the crystals repeatedly, has struggled to keep up with Space Godzilla on several occasions. Space Godzilla was strong enough to whoop Godzilla's ass for a while. He also took on Malgara, I believe is the name of that. I'm not 100% sure. But it was a robotic kaiju made from the remains of Mechagodzilla 2. This other mecha kaiju was able to move at well over infinite speeds as well. I know this because it was able to fight Space Godzilla in space briefly and dodge the crystals. That was impressive. Just wait till you hear his arsenal. He has several absurdly powerful attacks. His main one, the Corona Beam, is very similar to the Atomic Breath, only he can direct where it goes, and it is likely stronger than the normal Blue Atomic Breath, but a bit weaker than the Red Spiral Ray. On top of that, he has a fourth-dimensional attack, Super Gravity, which is a type of gravity that somehow transcends dimensions or something. It's hard to explain. The wiki's weird about it. As well as the crystals, which can amp his power even further. He can also amplify the Corona Beam to add up even more power into it, making it very similar to the Red Spiral Ray. He also possesses telekinesis, strong enough to lift Godzilla up and fling him around effortlessly. His crystals can act as weapons or traps, able to trap baby Godzilla and extremely damage Malgara, or whatever its name is. Plus, Space Godzilla can fly at infinite speed, as I've already mentioned, can make more crystals as added armor. However, the crystals on his shoulders, should they be destroyed, will weaken him tremendously. His best feat by far comes from the Godzilla in Hell comic book, if you consider Space Godzilla in this actually Space Godzilla and not some form of demon, as he was able to match Godzilla in Hell briefly and shatter an infinite dimension in a beam clash, meaning his power at the very least has to be half of an infinite dimension, so half of one layer of infinity. However, I'm going to highball to one infinity for this fight. On top of all that, Space Godzilla can influence an opponent's mind, as well as create his own mini kaiju, only within the video games, mind you. However, these mini kaiju were strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Godzilla in a straight-up fight, so he's definitely stacked. Now time to talk about Godzilla's ultimate nemesis, Destoroyah. Destoroyah is not only absurdly powerful, but absurdly evil, often taking unnecessary risks to damage his opponent as much as possible just to watch them suffer as he kills them, which ultimately led to him letting Godzilla power up all the way and get his ass whooped within Godzilla's first Destoroyah. But he's appeared after that and did technically survive that movie within some continuities. Destoroyah possesses several powerful attacks. Even in his microscopic form, he's able to produce clouds of micro-oxygen, able to just slaughter everything nearby. And he can turn into trillions of these little shits that just want to kill you with these little clouds of death. He can also transform into his juvenile forms, which are basically xenomorphs. It's xenomorphs shot super powerful micro-oxygen lasers that could one-shot people and were weak to ice because reasons. He can also enter his Argigant form, which is quite large and considered as powerful as Godzilla during Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I'm not joking, they're able to fight Godzilla Jr., who is directly stated to be around that level. So, they're pretty tough. I mean, are they on Space Godzilla, Godzilla in Hell level? No, not even close. But they are definitely, they could honestly scale to Galaxy level if you want to highball them. Which sounds insane, but that's what the scaling says. On top of that, they can go into flying forms, which are just arguments that fly, because, yeah, and they fly really fast, able to outspeed Godzilla Jr. and Godzilla at points, who, again, scale to infinite speed in combat. I know a lot of people are going to be like, the crystals equal travel speed. Like, you really think he slowed down the crystals when he was fighting Godzilla? Like, he just slowed them down to be nice? I don't think so. And then there's his ultimate form, the perfect form, confirmed to be 500 times more powerful than the Argigants or Flyings, meaning he's 500 times Space Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. He was also able to fight a Godzilla who was already considered universal within that movie, by statements by characters within that movie. It's a common misconception that Burning Godzilla is only planet level. In the movie, they say planet, and then they say Big Bang shortly afterwards, and the scaling seems to indicate Big Bang seems to be the correct scaling of power, not planet. Destoroyah in perfect form has a absurdly powerful micro-oxygen ray, able to knock down a universal, and again, Godzilla universe is supposed to be infinite in most continuities, so a infinite universal buster was getting knocked down by the micro-oxygen ray. There's also another misconception that micro-oxygen only affects creatures that require oxygen. Space Godzilla obviously doesn't. However, micro-oxygen is not just oxygen-destroying power. It is super hot, just like plasma or radiation would be. Otherwise, it wouldn't glow and blow up buildings. Do buildings need oxygen? Not really. So that misconception is just stupid. Destoroyah is weak to extreme temperatures. However, since he's taken on a beam that was called the Infinite Heat Ray, which was confirmed to have infinite power that multiplies infinitely with every hit, he took like 3 or 4, depending on comics or manga, or movie, obviously. Destoroyah's definitely durable. And on top of that, the Infinite Heat Ray should have pretty insane heat. I mean, it's an infinite heat ray. So, obviously, he's resistant to one of the two extreme temperatures. Destoroyah is definitely weak to the cold. He's been defeated by both Cairo lasers and the Absolute Zero cannon. Although, in order to hurt him with cold, it has to be extremely cold in order to actually freeze him and stop micro-oxygen from multiplying. Meaning the depths of space wouldn't really work on him. Plus, he should be able to fight in space, just judging from what we've seen in Hell. On top of that, Destoroyah was also in Godzilla in Hell and took a blast from Godzilla to the face and didn't even take any damage. This Destoroyah also possesses a chest beam that has actually damaged Godzilla extremely bad before, as well as a laser katana horn, which is strong enough to cut right through Godzilla, no problem whatsoever. He can also drain your energy with his tail or absorb your DNA from a single drop of blood he gets out of you, which will allow him to transform to an even greater evolution, which will also multiply his power by an absurd margin. Between these two titans, who actually would win a fight? Well, for starters, Space Godzilla is definitely lacking in power against Destoroyah. Yes, he could scale to an infinite dimension leveled attack, but that's only within the comics. Destoroyah was just as strong in his own movie, plus he's stronger in the comics. So Destoroyah pretty blatantly overpowers Space Godzilla. The crystals could help, but Destoroyah isn't exactly an idiot like people like to think. His intelligence is directly compared to Godzilla, so he could probably figure out Space Godzilla's weakness. Whereas Space Godzilla would have no idea that Destoroyah is weak to ice whatsoever, and no real way to exploit it even if he did know. Space Godzilla does have a better arsenal overall. His crystals could definitely harm Destoroyah. His Corona beam is able to outmaneuver Destoroyah and could definitely damage him. He's consistently shown better speed feats than Destoroyah has, and he's likely a bit smarter. However, Destoroyah, well, not as smart or necessarily having as good an arsenal, his micro-oxygen would definitely harm Space Godzilla tremendously bad, especially with the massive power gap, and his DNA absorption plus energy drain and his chest beam and laser katana would mess Space Godzilla up extremely bad. On top of this, Destoroyah can definitely handle being thrown around by telekinesis, and that's if he doesn't absorb some of Space Godzilla's DNA and take that ability for himself. Supergravity could definitely hurt him, but not for very long when he's just going to turn into a bunch of smaller Destoroyahs and then reform elsewhere. His regeneration and Space Godzilla's are pretty even, but when he's using micro-oxygen on Space Godzilla, he's not really going to need to regenerate as much when Space Godzilla's melting from just endless barrages of micro-oxygen attacks. On top of all of that, Space Godzilla's mind manipulation only really seems to work on humans. He has tried it on kaiju before, but it's never really went extremely well, especially on someone as powerful as Destoroyah. Space Godzilla could have a shot if Destoroyah wastes time trying to just beat the shit out of him and just watch him suffer, because he's an evil asshole and likes torturing his enemies. But I'm assuming Destoroyah would definitely pick on it. Hey, Space Godzilla is probably not something I should have a ton of time to figure out a plan, and he's likely not going to waste too much time causing as much pain as he possibly can. Although if he does, Space Godzilla will eventually begin to overpower Destoroyah via the crystals, and eventually the arsenal would give him a win. However, I think more times than not, Destoroyah is going to take the win here just because of a massive power gap and a more lethal fighting style. However, this fight is definitely not a 100 times out of 100 Destoroyah wins. I'd say Destoroyah wins at least 75% of the time, but Space Godzilla could win at least 1/4. If you guys like the video, please consider liking or subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.